You're watching World Talks on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Russia has launched a fresh wave of missile attacks on Ukraine, targeting cities like Dnipro and Kryvyi Rih. Ukrainian authorities have suggested that this marks the first use of an intercontinental ballistic missile by Russian forces in the war. But international observers remain sceptical. To help us unpack these developments, I'm joined now by the leader of the Congress of People's Deputies of Russia, Ilya Ponomarev. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, what do you make of these developments? Do they come as any surprise to you?
Well, they're trying to scare us, and that's exactly what we shouldn't allow them to do, because they want to negotiate. They're in a difficult situation themselves. It's a war of attrition, and it's not going well neither for Ukraine nor for Russia. The hopes in Kremlin is that with the new administration in Washington, D.C., those peace talks would eventually take place. The bad news is that I think they're right, but even worse news that after this peace talk would take place, the world would be in a bigger danger, because Russia would not be able to stop fighting, and it would be just a short break for rearmament and for attacking more countries.
So do you sense this is, I guess, a fake show of force, a fake show of arms, when really behind the scenes Russia is struggling?
Well, I think so, because that's what figures in the Russian economy are suggesting us. And just a couple of days ago, there was an appearance of the chairman of Russian Central Bank in the State Duma in the Russian Parliament, where she actually delivered the pretty grim picture on what's going on in the Russian economy. She tried to be a bit, but she couldn't hide the truth. That's why they need this break, and they hope that with the new administration they would actually receive it.
Let's talk about that new administration. What does the election of Donald Trump mean for the region? I mean, do you think there is any hope that he will broker the peace that he says he can?
First of all, I think that peace in terms of ceasefire is very likely. I think that she would push for it hard. And I think that she might get it because, again, both Ukraine and Russia are pretty exhausted from what's going on. And that could be a convenient moment for both to say that it's not us, it's just, some things that happen beyond our control that forced us to sit and to talk. But from the other side, what they would do next, that's the biggest question, because Donald Trump, during his campaign, he many times repeated that he is not a friend of Vladimir Putin, that he wants this regime to be changed in Russia, that he just thinks that it's not should be done through a military means, but through economic means, and that they need to suffocate the regime, to cut it from the financial inflows from sales of oil and gas and other natural resources, and that's his objective. Whether he would be successful in this strategy or not, that's what we have to see.
Do you think that with Donald Trump trying to broker a peace, people have called him transactional, that he will broker a deal wherever, whenever, as long as it's a deal that I guess benefits both parties to a certain extent, or at least in his mind. Do you think that a peace deal under Donald Trump looks like concession of land?
He wants basically to fix the situation in the way it is right now. So they take the existing front lines and say, so let's keep it like it is. That means that 1/5 of Ukrainian territory is occupied, and it's more than 1/5 of Ukrainian population is under foreign control. And obviously we are concerned not about land, we are concerned about people and about their sufferings. Again, the good news is that Ukraine controls part of Russia. And this Kursk region is very important in this sense, because it would force Russia to swap certain territories for returning Kursk under their control. And I think that Ukrainians have all the chances to negotiate the return of occupied parts of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions under Ukrainian control.
What difference do you think the US approving the use of long-range missiles could mean for the conflict? Does it just provoke Russia to retaliate harder? Is it something that genuinely on the front line could be helpful?
You know, I think it's rather symbolic because Ukraine doesn't have a lot of those missiles. And at the same time, Ukraine now has a lot of long-range drones. So it's more not about the using of particular missiles, but it's rather about permissions to strike certain objects. And so far, Western nations, they were restricting Ukraine, holding, twisting Ukrainian arms, that they don't make any strikes on Moscow, that they don't touch the houses, the residences of Russian elites, which are actually conducting this war, so that it should be focused exclusively on some army barracks or some very focused on military objects. And that's not how the war would be ended, because before Russian elites would feel that they are on war, that they are in danger, that they are being personally threatened, they would continue.
How does this all end? You've previously written a book called Does Putin Have to Die? The story of how Russia becomes a democracy after losing to Ukraine. Well, that's my question. Is Vladimir Putin ever capable of waving the white flag, of retreating, of going, you know what, actually, I didn't succeed here and I'm just going back to where I was?
Look, the thing that I was repeating from the very beginning of the large-scale invasion, that the only way to stop this war is to remove Putin from office and to destroy Putinism as a political system. All the rest, they are supporting measures for this. You can never end this war by returning to the borders of 1991. Because even if you are successful in the military sense, it still would be a front lines. The missiles would still be flying, people would still be dying, the fighting would still go on. It's like with Hitler, by restoring the borders of pre-1939 in Europe didn't mean that the war would end. You have to go to Berlin to stop the war. In the modern world, with the nuclear arms and whatever, we are not coming to Moscow. But still, politically, we can remove this regime. And that's why I wrote the book that you mentioned. We must achieve political changes in Russia if we want peace in Europe.
You are an exiled opposition leader, the leader of the Congress of People's Deputies of Russia. How difficult, then, is it to rally an opposition to Putin's regime from outside of the country?
It is exhausting, but it's not a question whether it's outside or inside. That's what many people take, I think.
But it must be difficult to win over the Russian people that you're...
Look, the largest Russian revolution of 1917, which was led by Bolsheviks, which all lived in exile, right? So it's not such a big difference where you guys live. It's a question of how decisive you are. Because many of Russian emigres, they live in different world capitals and then just enjoying their life. And they care about their own well-being and they are not doing anything about Russia. That's why our focus from the very beginning was to support those who fight and to support Russian volunteers in the front lines which are fighting alongside with Ukrainian army and support Russian resistance which are fighting at the home front inside Russia. Do something. That's the most important thing. And that's what Congress of People's Deputies is all about, is supporting those who fight and making a vision of Russia after the political changes, because also nobody wants to jump without knowing where you would land. How
do you, I guess, get rid of Vladimir Putin? How does a Russia move into a space where there is a different leader, like yourself, who takes over the country? I mean, how does it even get to that point? Because, of course, Vladimir Putin has been in charge for so long. Most people around the world couldn't even imagine a Russia not led by Vladimir Putin.
Look, I wish I would have a philosopher's stone which would change the situation. I can tell you exactly, so I make a click and things would flip. I cannot, realistically. I think that most likely the events would be triggered inside Russia, and most likely they would be triggered either by Vladimir Putin's physical illness or by a defeat inside Ukraine. I don't know what would be the trigger, but I am pretty certain that after it would be triggered, the situation would start to unfold extremely quickly. And here is the main part of your question, is who is coming next? Because if you are not prepared, if you don't have a political alternative, if it's not accepted by the existing elites, which understand where it's heading, then we may see very ugly leaders. The regime would change anyway, because Vladimir Putin is a mortal person. So whether it would be next year, or it would be in 5 years, or it would be in 10 years, it will change. But whether you want to have even uglier leader, or you want to make this process controlled and make the positive change so Russia would return to the family of European nations, that's our joint question to decide. And obviously, Congress of People's Deputies gives a precise answer. We need Russia to become part of Europe again.
And if there is a change in the next 5 to 10 years, are you the one that wants to take over?
I think it would be shorter than 5 to 10 years. We don't have that much time, and I hope there would be not a single person to take over. I hope that it would be a parliamentary republic, and that would be a normal democratic system without a new Tsar.
Leader of the Congress of People's Deputies of Russia, Ilya Ponomarev, thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. Do stay with us. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.